She was on top of him, one hand on his chest, the other gripping his jaw, not to guide, but to command. "You thought you were taking me," she whispered, voice steady. "But tell me, who's begging now?" He didn't answer. Couldn't. She hadn't stolen his body. She'd stolen the script. If this opening left your pulse just a little out of rhythm, like, subscribe, stay. There's more where that came from. I held my breath. Not because I was nervous, but because silence was easier to control than emotion. The attic was still. Dust floated in shafts of fading light that slipped through the high windows of Voss Hall. I stood in the corner of that forgotten space, alone, untouched by the noise downstairs, wearing a white silk slip and nothing else. The wedding gown waited on a dress form behind me. It looked exactly as he wanted. Modest neckline, lace sleeves, fitted waist. Fragile. Virgin white. The kind of dress a man chooses when he wants to feel like he's saving something. I didn't touch it yet. I was still finishing my ritual. In front of me stood a full-length mirror, antique, with speckled edges and a wooden frame carved like vines curling around prey. I looked at myself. Pale shoulders, hair pulled into a low, disciplined twist, lips unpainted. I looked like a girl who didn't know what was about to happen. Good. Because everything was happening exactly the way I planned. I knelt and reached beneath the floorboard, lifting it slowly so it wouldn't creak. From the small space hidden underneath, I pulled out a silver object the size of a paperclip, shaped like a collar stay, brushed with matte finish. Custom-made, undetectable. It wasn't a weapon, not in the obvious sense. I tucked it into the silk ribbon sewn under the hem of the wedding dress, exactly where it needed to be. That was the last piece. When I slipped into the gown, it whispered over my skin like water. The moment I stood upright again, my reflection in the mirror didn't tremble. She stared back, calm, prepared, almost too still to be real. She was the one walking down the aisle, not me. The ceremony didn't matter. Not really. It was a transaction with flowers and champagne. I stood beneath the vaulted ceiling of the West Hall, beneath a chandelier so massive it looked ready to fall. Dominic stood beside me, flawless in a black three-piece suit. His jaw sharp, eyes unreadable. He looked like a man who expected to win. Always. He didn't take my hand. His fingers brushed against mine for the sake of appearance, but never fully closed around them. To him, I was a ribbon tied neatly around a deal. Soft, delicate, purely symbolic. Perfect. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," he leaned in with performative elegance, not passion. His lips barely grazed mine, but I let my hands tremble. I let my lashes flutter as if overwhelmed. I let him believe I was helpless. After the guests had filtered out, after the congratulations and champagne and stifling small talk, we were led to the wedding suite. A long, moody room with velvet drapes and candles glowing against dark-paneled walls. The fireplace flickered in the corner. He reached for his jacket, folding it neatly over a chair. That was the moment. "Wait," I said, voice thin, almost a whisper. Dominic turned to look at me. I stepped forward, brushing imaginary dust from his lapel. My fingers moved with gentle precision. Innocent. Obedient. Then, very softly, I tucked 2 fingers under the edge of his inner pocket and slipped the silver device inside. It was magnetic. It clicked into place, just enough pressure to activate. Later when I needed it. He didn't notice, because I was looking at him the way he expected, like a girl who didn't know how to want. Back in the attic, alone again before dinner, I stared into the mirror one last time. The white veil lay over my shoulders now. The dress hugged my waist. I looked like something breakable. My lips were a little redder, my eyes a little glossier. Thank you, glycerin. Drops. But the stillness underneath was colder than marble. They thought I was afraid. They thought I was walking blind into a life I didn't understand. They thought this night belonged to him. But I wasn't the one being claimed. He was. Downstairs, voices buzzed like static. Champagne glasses clinked. Staff moved with crisp efficiency. Dominic was waiting in the suite, probably preparing a speech, or maybe reviewing some contract detail he couldn't ignore. He was a man who lived by systems, who trusted order. He'd never seen a woman turn vulnerability into a weapon. Not yet. I slipped the device's activation card into my garter. One touch. That's all it would take later. The suite door would lock automatically. The cameras would go dark. The room would become ours, or rather, mine. As I descended the spiral staircase, every step measured, every glance controlled, I repeated the lines I had practiced. Look soft. Look quiet. Look like you belong in someone else's story. Let him underestimate you. Let him open the door. Let him fall in love with the lie. So when the truth finally lands, it hits like a goddamn thunderclap. In the mirror, I looked like a bride. But I wasn't one. I was an architect, a strategist, a daughter of silence and calculation. He thought he was marrying a girl who needed protection. But he was walking into a room designed by someone who had already mapped every exit and sealed them all. He thought I was walking into his world. He had no idea he was stepping into mine. The suite smelled like firewood and leather, opulence wrapped in silence. Dominic stood by the window, staring down at the snowy grounds of Voss Hall. His tie was loosened, but his posture hadn't softened. He wasn't the kind of man who relaxed. He recalibrated. I stayed by the door, unmoving, veil removed, hair down. Every inch of me still fit the part. The silent bride, freshly claimed. He didn't turn around when he spoke. You're quiet. I'm listening, I said, almost gently. He nodded, not out of approval, just acknowledgement. Dominic Voss didn't give approval. He gave terms. And you either accepted or became obsolete. He gestured to the desk behind him. A thick envelope rested on it. Your copy, he said, in case you want to reread what you signed. I walked slowly toward the envelope. Not too quickly, never eager. Just enough hesitation to reinforce the idea that I might be intimidated, that I was overwhelmed, that this was all too much for me. He wanted to believe that, because it made him feel safer. The prenup was elegant in its cruelty. 8 pages of legal choreography spelling out how this union would work. I would not interfere in his business affairs. I would not touch his assets, digital or otherwise. I would fulfill my role as spouse in public functions and maintain conduct appropriate to the Voss brand. Any deviation would result in annulment without settlement. The final clause was my favorite. Tucked neatly in the last paragraph, a polite little bullet point. Subject to amendment if both parties agree in writing. I had added that one myself. Quietly, weeks ago, through his lawyer, disguised in language Dominic wouldn't bother to question, because it was hidden in the part of the document he never really read. The part about mutual goodwill. I knew he wouldn't question it. Men like Dominic never think the girl in white can play dirtier than they do. He finally turned to look at me. His eyes flicked from my face to the papers, then back. Still sure about all this? I let the silence stretch, then, are you? That made him blink, just once. Then he smiled. It was the kind of smile that made people nervous, polished, slightly amused, utterly unreadable. I never do anything I'm unsure of. Liar. I walked to the desk, picked up the pen beside the envelope, and twirled it between my fingers, like a girl stalling for courage. Then I pressed the cap back, in place, and set it down carefully. "What happens now?" I asked. I already knew, but I wanted to hear it from him. I wanted to hear how he imagined this script playing out. He leaned back against the desk, arms crossed, like a man explaining policy. "Now we establish trust, routine, boundaries. You'll have a calendar, public appearances, travel, press. We'll avoid anything theatrical. I don't like drama. You'll learn that." I smiled. "And intimacy?" He cocked an eyebrow. "That's up to you. No obligation. But I'm not in the habit of chasing. If you want me, you'll let me know." My fingers curled just slightly. "I'll let you know." He walked past me toward the side cabinet, poured himself a bourbon, and added nothing to it. No ice. No apology. "There's a car for you tomorrow. To the city. You'll have staff. A stipend. You can keep working if it's something quiet. Nothing public-facing. Image matters." "I work in a library," I said. "Quiet is the job." That made him glance at me. Curious. A flicker of something behind his pupils. "You read much?" "Only what I want to remember." He took a slow sip. Then he said something that wasn't meant to cut, but did, beautifully. "You don't need to remember anything anymore. Now you just get to exist." I smiled, but only on the outside. Now I just get to exist. That was it, wasn't it? The real reason this man had picked me, out of all the polished women who had tried to claim his time. I wasn't loud. I wasn't ambitious. I didn't ask for things. To him, I was a soft room he could walk into without resistance. A place to put his sharp edges when they got tired. Too bad he had no idea this room was lined with mirrors, and every move he made I was already watching from 10 angles. When he stepped out to take a call, someone named Foster, security detail, I picked up the contract again, flipped to the back page, ran my finger over the clause I had inserted. Subject to amendment. Not tonight. Not yet. But eventually this document would fold into something else entirely. That night, I lay in the center of the enormous bed with my back to him. We didn't touch. We didn't speak. But I knew his breathing pattern, his movement, the slight tension in his spine that betrayed he wasn't sleeping. I could feel the calculation radiating off him. He thought I was too small to be a threat, that I'd fold neatly into the space he built for me, that he had just acquired something manageable. He had no idea he'd just invited an architect into his house. He handed me a contract, thinking it would define our story. I read it and smiled, because I already knew how it would end. The door closed behind him with a soft metallic click. He turned the lock with a casual flick of his wrist, assuming wrongly that he was the one in control. The suite glowed, with low amber light. The fireplace crackled. Candles lined the mantel in measured symmetry. The air was thick with cedarwood, bourbon, and heat. I was sitting at the edge of the bed, still in the gown. I hadn't undone a single button. He stood by the door for a beat, taking me in. "You're still dressed." "I didn't know if I was supposed to wait," I said, voice light, uncertain, almost breathless. He tilted his head. The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile. More like possession disguised as charm. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to do." He crossed the room slowly, removing his cufflinks. Every movement deliberate, precise. The man did everything like he was being watched. Even when he thought he wasn't, I kept my eyes low. Let the silence stretch. "I've never," I whispered. He froze. It was the first time I'd seen him hesitate, the smallest stutter in his breath. His hand paused midair, just above his belt. "Never?" I nodded, eyes wide, still not meeting his. He stepped closer, slow now, almost careful. You're telling me this on our wedding night? I didn't want it to change things, I murmured. I didn't want you to think I was fragile, a lie inside a lie. He ate it up like gospel. It doesn't change anything, he said softly. That was the problem. He moved closer. His fingers reached for the first button of my gown. I exhaled, shakily, timed to perfection. A tremor in my shoulders. A slight pull of my hands toward the edge of the bed, like prey retreating into itself. But I wasn't prey. He leaned forward, brushing his lips near my collarbone. His hand settled at my hip. That was when I moved. Just slightly. Just enough. I leaned in, whispered into his neck. Can I touch you first? He didn't expect that. He froze again. Then nodded, just once. I brought both hands up to his chest, palms flat and pressed gently. The touch was soft, reverent, but my thumbs found the exact spot beneath his lapel, where the silver sensor was sewn into his inner pocket. One press, one pulse. A silent signal sent wirelessly to the control app. I had pre-installed earlier in the day. Downstairs, the building's smart system received it. It executed the routine I'd programmed 2 weeks ago under a false admin name: lock the suite door from the inside, disable external camera feeds for this room, redirect power away from the alarm override. It took less than 3 seconds. By the time Dominic leaned back, still under the illusion that he was leading, the trap had already closed around him. You okay? He asked. I smiled. Yes, because I was. He leaned in to kiss me again. Slower this time. More careful. I let it happen. Let him think he was claiming me. Let him think he was unraveling something sacred. But he wasn't unraveling me. He was undoing himself. He pulled back, finally meeting my eyes. You don't have to be afraid of me, he said. That was when I smiled, really smiled, for the first time all night. I'm not. He blinked. You said this was your first time. It is, I said, but not the way you think. I stood. He stepped back instinctively. The shift in dynamic was sudden, so fast it made the air thicken between us. I reached behind me, undid the final clasp on the gown, and let it fall. Beneath, I wore a sleek, flesh-colored slip. No lace, no innocence, just purpose. He didn't speak. I walked to the fireplace, picked up the small remote I'd hidden earlier. I pressed a second button. A panel on the far wall clicked open. Inside, a screen. Small, embedded, flickering softly with real-time footage. Footage of him, his office, his boardroom, the footage he thought was deleted. You married a library girl, I said. Someone quiet, someone simple. I turned to face him again. You didn't check what I was reading. He stared at the screen, recognition dawning, slow and cold. How long have you? Long enough to know the only thing more powerful than knowing your secrets. I stepped forward again, is choosing when to reveal them. He reached for his phone. The screen flashed red. No signal, I said. Room's locked. Cameras are off. It's just us. He looked at me now, not as a bride, not as a girl, as a threat. What do you want? I tilted my head. What every woman wants on her wedding night. Pause. A little honesty. He didn't move. Didn't speak. His world, the one he built with armor and algorithms, wasn't cracking. It was melting, and he didn't know how to stop it. You thought this night was your victory, I said, but you didn't win anything. I walked, closer, until we were only inches apart. You lost the moment you believed I needed saving. He swallowed, jaw tightening, still silent. I leaned in, voice soft against his ear. You said I could tell you when I wanted you. My hand ran slowly down his chest. Confident now, no longer pretending. This is me telling you. You belong to me now. He entered the room to claim a bride. He left the night realizing he'd been hunted. He didn't say a word. Not when I took the remote from the fireplace. Not when the hidden panel behind the bookshelf slid open with a mechanical sigh. Not even when I stepped inside and turned on the light. The glow revealed a narrow room, just 6 feet wide, 10 long. No windows. Walls lined with screens and folders, precise and orderly, like a war room designed by someone who preferred silence over spectacle. He followed, not because he trusted me, but because he had to. Some part of him still believed he could regain control, that this was salvageable, that I was emotional, just lashing out. He didn't know yet that this room had existed before the wedding, before the proposal, before he ever looked me in the eye. I stepped aside so he could see. The center screen played a muted video, his quarterly boardroom meeting from 3 months ago. The one he claimed was off the record. In the footage, he was speaking to 3 executives. The topic? A black budget project. Unapproved surveillance software. I tapped a folder on the desk and opened it, flipping pages with deliberate calm. Financial leak estimates, confidential memos, handwritten annotations by his own CTO, who, as far as I knew, had no idea someone had copied her entire office wall. Dominic moved like a statue trying not to shatter. Where did you get this? I looked at him. Not kindly, not cruelly, just level. From the public domain, then from the private one, then from a very lazy intern who didn't encrypt his login session. He stared at the files, then at me. Why? Now that was the question. But it wasn't time yet. I walked across the room and opened another cabinet, this one shallow, filled with names, staff lists, legal advisors, shell companies, all traceable, all him. This isn't about extortion, I said. Could have fooled me. His voice was sharp, but quiet, still composed, still clinging to the idea that I was playing high-stakes poker. But I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't even playing the same game. I turned to face him. You don't remember her, do you? He blinked. Who? Frances Marsh. Silence. Then, no, of course not. She worked at Eastbrook Law School, head librarian, 15 years, perfect record, no scandals. Until 1 month after your firm installed a beta security platform, without authorization. You called it a stress test. I didn't blink. The system flagged students. Surveillance was activated. Privacy laws were broken. She took the fall. His mouth parted slightly, but no sound came out. You said, on record, if someone got fired from a test, they weren't essential to begin with. Now he was staring. She was my aunt. He stepped back, half a step, barely visible, but I saw it. She didn't survive the fallout. She lost her job, her pension, her name. She died 3 months later. Still, he said nothing. Because there was nothing to say. You can't apologize for something you don't remember. That's what made it worse. I walked back to the desk and opened the final drawer. Inside was a single envelope. I slid it toward him. No. Threats inside. No money demands. Just a copy of the report that cleared her. Quietly. After her funeral. I waited. He opened it. His hands didn't shake, but they moved slower now. He read. His jaw tightened. His throat bobbed once. I didn't know, he said at last. You didn't care. The air between us shifted, thickened. He looked up, and for the first time since I met him, I saw something crack behind his eyes, a thread snapping beneath the weight of something unnamed. Why marry me? He asked, voice low. Why not go public? Because I didn't want to destroy you, I said. I wanted you to remember her, and the only way to do that, I stepped forward, was to matter more than she did. He closed the file, set it down carefully. So this was never about love. I tilted my head. This was about choice. He turned away. One hand braced on the wall. You could have ruined me. I still can. Silence. But I won't. I walked up behind him, close enough to feel his breath slow, close enough that he could feel my restraint. Because now, you remember her name. He turned slowly. There was no fight in his face anymore. Only weight, and questions he'd never thought to ask. What happens now? Now, I said. You stop thinking I married you because I needed someone to save me. Pause. And you start asking yourself why a man like you ever needed a woman who looked like someone to save. That night, we didn't speak again. Not a word. He stayed on the far side of the bed, eyes open long after the fire died. But I saw it. Not fear. Not rage, recognition, and something colder, respect. He forgot her. So I became unforgettable. By morning, the temperature had dropped 10 degrees, and so had his restraint. He didn't say goodbye when he left the suite. Didn't kiss my cheek. Barely looked at me. Which was fine. I hadn't expected a man like Dominic Voss to sit in shame for long. Men like him don't stew. They retaliate, quietly, surgically. By noon, I'd already received 3 phone calls. The apartment I was promised. In Manhattan, delayed. My library access credentials? Temporarily suspended due to a system audit. My stipend card? Flagged for irregular activity. It didn't take a genius to connect the dots. I didn't bother answering any of the calls. Already knew the pattern. He was probing the edges. Testing how much pressure I could take before bending. A normal girl might have panicked. Called him, apologized, tried to fix it. I did none of those things. I made tea. By evening, his assistant, Jessica, called. Her tone was smooth, professional, and very slightly weaponized. Mr. Voss would like to invite you to dinner. Just the 2 of you, no press. Invite. Like I was a guest in his empire, not his wife. What time? I asked. 8. He'll be at the penthouse. At 7:56 p.m., I walked into his world wearing a charcoal gray silk dress with no sleeves and no back. Clean. Unthreatening. Elegant enough to say, I'm not broken. I'm just thinking. He didn't greet me. He was sitting by the floor-to-ceiling window, whiskey in hand, city lights bleeding behind him. He looked tired in the way powerful men hate to be seen, tired not from lack of sleep, but from being wrong. You didn't answer my messages, he said, not looking at me. None of them were questions, I replied. He let out a short, humorless breath. You think you've won something. I walked to the table and poured myself water. I sat without waiting for permission. I didn't marry you to win. Bullshit. That was the first time he cursed in front of me. Interesting. You planned this, he continued, down to the second. The software, the files, the bedroom, that speech. It wasn't a speech. It was a fucking performance. Everything is, I said, looking him dead in the eye. You just didn't know you weren't the one directing it. He stood and crossed the room in 2 long strides. You broke into my system. You violated my security. You could go to prison. I could. So why haven't you? I set my glass down. Because I haven't given you a reason yet. He stared at me. You want money? No. Power. Already have it. Then what? I stood slowly. Close the space between us. I want you to understand what it feels like to doubt everything you thought was safe. Pause. I want you to live in a world where I am the variable. His jaw worked, but he didn't speak. I could see him calculating, still trying to find the seam in my logic, the glitch in the matrix. But there wasn't one. I'd built this too carefully. From the moment I saw his name in my aunt's case file 5 years ago, I started drafting this moment. You married me thinking you were getting silence, I said. A trophy that doesn't speak unless spoken to. I married you because you were clean. No one is clean. You just didn't bother to look deeper. He turned away, poured more whiskey, and downed it in one breath. So now what? He asked. You haunt me? No. I walked toward the window and looked out over the city. It glittered like a lie. Beautiful, precise, fragile. Now I wait. For what? For you to decide whether you want to fight me or learn from me. He didn't laugh, didn't scoff, just looked at me. Really looked. Why didn't you destroy me? He asked, quiet now, almost human. I didn't answer right away. Then, because I'm not interested in breaking things I could bend instead. We stood in silence for a while. Two people, inches apart, breathing the same air but from opposite worlds. Then he said something I didn't expect. There was another version of me. A long time ago. He might have remembered your aunt. I looked at him. And this version? He finished his drink. This version only remembers the people who leave marks. I smiled. Then maybe I should leave a few more. That night, I didn't sleep at the penthouse. I left him standing there, alone in his tower, unsure for the first time whether he was the one being tested. He tried to push me, and found that I don't bend. He retaliated like a man used to being obeyed. I responded like a woman used to being underestimated. He showed up at midnight. No call, no warning. Just the dull thud of his knuckles against the door of the brownstone I was temporarily staying in. I opened it without asking why. Dominic Voss stood there, shirt undone at the collar, rain clinging to his sleeves, a look on his face that said he'd burned something on the way over. Maybe a plan. Maybe pride. He didn't speak. I stepped aside. He entered like a man stepping into a fight he knew he might lose. The fireplace had been lit hours ago. The room was warm and low-lit, the only sound the hiss of logs shifting under flame. I sat back, on the velvet armchair, legs crossed, watching him. He took 2 steps toward me, then stopped. Say something, he said. Why? I asked. You didn't come here for words. He stared, breathing hard. You think this is about control, he said. I smiled. Isn't it? And then he moved. Quick, controlled, not angry, but intentional. His hand gripped my jaw, not cruelly, but firmly. Enough to lift my face to his. Enough to remind me that he was still trying to read me, to feel who had the upper hand. I let him. His thumb traced the edge of my mouth. You make me forget myself, he said. I don't know if I want to break you or kneel. Why not both? I whispered. And then I kissed him. Or maybe he kissed me. It didn't matter who moved first. It only mattered that we both stopped thinking. He pulled me from the chair with one hand, spun me into him, and kissed like a man who didn't ask for permission, because he didn't need to. And I kissed him back like a woman who gave it only when she'd already won. Clothes fell in pieces. His shirt ripped down the middle. My doing. My nails raked across his back, not from passion but from claiming. His breath hitched. He lifted me like I weighed nothing and carried me to the rug before the fire. I didn't tremble. I guided. He pinned my wrists above my head, but only for a moment. Then he let go. I rolled us, slid over him, chest to chest, thigh to thigh. He froze, not because he didn't want it, but because he didn't expect me to take it. His hands found my hips, but I stilled them. "Don't move," I said. He obeyed. Just like that. His pupils dilated. The mask of command slipped. "You're not scared of me," he breathed. "No," I said, lips brushing his neck. "You're scared of how much you want me in charge." I took him in with no hesitation. No shyness, no apologies. His breath shattered against my throat. His hands clenched the rug, the only anchor he had left. I set the rhythm, the speed, the depth. He let me. He needed to. Every movement was a declaration. Not of love, of power. When he came apart beneath me, it wasn't loud. It was helpless. And when I leaned down, lips to his ear, I didn't whisper comfort. I whispered truth. "Now, you know what it feels like? To be taken." He lay still beneath me for a long time, chest rising, sweat slick on his skin, eyes wide open. I slid off him, walked naked across the room, and pulled a blanket over my shoulders. He sat up, still dazed. "What the hell are you?" he asked. I turned. "Everything you thought you could own, except I let you think it." He blinked. Once, twice. Then he laughed, but it wasn't mocking. It was bitter, admiring, and terrified. "You're dangerous," he said. "I was made to be," I replied. "Men like you made me that way." He stood, walking toward me, slower now. Less sure. "You used me." "No. I used what you wanted me to be. There's a difference." He stopped in front of me, close enough to feel the fire at our backs. "And what now?" "Now," I said. "You decide if you can handle what you thought you wanted." He stared at me a long time, and for once, didn't try to answer. Because he didn't know. Because I had given him something he'd never truly experienced. Submission. Not taken, given. And the weight of that was heavier than any chain he'd ever held. He came to dominate. I let him feel what it was like to surrender. 3 days passed. He didn't call. I didn't show up. The silence wasn't tension. It was pressure. Slow and surgical. The kind that cracks things from the inside, where they don't make noise, just break. On the 4th morning, his assistant emailed me. "Mr. Voss has sent a package for your review. Please confirm receipt." I didn't respond. At exactly 9 a.m., the package arrived. It wasn't flowers, not diamonds. It was a revised prenup. A silent white envelope, sealed with his initials, in black wax. Inside, I found 68 pages of legal reshuffling, asset redistribution, privacy clauses, a new codicil about mutual autonomy, and one line, bolded at the top of page 3. "This document supersedes all prior agreements." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because he thought he could rewrite my story. I let the envelope sit on my desk for 24 hours, not unopened, not ignored, just watched. The way you watch something that pretends to be an offering, but smells like control. He was still playing by his rules, still trying to regain footing, still believing this was a game of power. It wasn't. It was a question of worth. On the second night, I wrote my own document. It was 5 pages long, not 68, simple, precise, clean. It didn't ask for money. It didn't ask for forgiveness. It asked for nothing but truth. The document clause. 1. Both parties retain individual autonomy in all, personal and professional matters. Clause 2. No party shall assume ownership, direction, or entitlement over the other. Clause 3. Either party may end the arrangement at any time, without justification and without penalty. Clause 4. Love, if it arrives, must be declared without expectation. Clause 5. If either party breaks these terms, the other is free, forever. I printed it, signed only one side, left the other blank. Arrived at his office at 6:43 p.m. No appointment, no warning. The receptionist opened her mouth to stop me. I didn't slow down. His office door was unlocked. He looked up when I entered. No surprise, just fatigue worn like a suit. I was starting to think you wouldn't come, he said. I wanted you to think that. He closed the file on his desk. Waited. I placed the envelope in front of him. This is the only version I'll sign. He didn't touch it. Do I get to read it? You get to feel it. He opened the envelope slowly. His eyes scanned fast. He'd been trained that way. A man used to spotting traps in fine print. But there were none. Only rules that required something he wasn't used to giving. Egoless choice. He stopped at clause 5. Read it twice. You'd leave if I broke this. I wouldn't blink. Even. Now? Especially now. He leaned back, looked at me, not with calculation, not with resentment, just undressed. No mask, no armor, no Dominic Voss, CEO. Just a man realizing he was no longer feared, and maybe didn't want to be. You terrify me, he said softly. I tilted my head. That's not my goal. Then what is? I want to see what you are when you're not in control. He held the paper between two fingers. You think this makes us equal? No, I said. It makes us honest. And if I sign, then I'll stay. He looked at me like someone trying to find the trick. There wasn't one. Just a woman offering her presence as a privilege, not a guarantee. He signed, not with flourish. Not with pride, just quiet ink on paper. Then he handed it back. I don't know how to do this, he said. That's the point, I replied. Before I left, I turned in the doorway. This was never about ruining you, I said. If it had been, you'd already be done. He nodded. Then what was it? I looked at him for a long time. It was about making sure that if I ever chose to love you, it wouldn't be because I forgot who I was first. That night, he didn't follow me. He didn't try to call. He just let me go. And that was the most powerful thing he'd done yet. He thought power meant control. I taught him it meant letting go, and still being chosen. The first snowfall of winter came quiet, like it didn't want to be seen. It dusted the sidewalk outside the New York Public Library in soft silver. Tourists pulled out their phones. A little girl caught a flake on her tongue and laughed. Inside, I was shelving a stack of books I'd already read twice. Rereading was a habit I never shook. Not because I feared forgetting, but because I liked knowing what came next and still feeling it anyway. That's the thing about stories. Even when you know how they end, the choice to feel is always new. He showed up just after 4. No suit. No security detail. No performance. Just Dominic Voss in a long black coat, holding a small paper cup of coffee like he didn't know what to do with his hands. He looked like someone who'd stood in front of a mirror too long before walking out the door. I didn't speak. Neither did he. He walked slowly between the rows, stopping 6 feet away. The silence between us wasn't heavy. It was open. Is this where you come to hide? He asked, voice low. No, I said. It's where I go when I don't want to perform. He nodded, eyes scanning the books behind me like he needed somewhere safe to rest them. I read your contract again last night. It's not a contract, I said. It's an exit door. With conditions. Only one. Truth. He took a step closer. I've lived most of my life asking one question, he said. How do I keep what's mine? And then I met you. And the question changed. I raised an eyebrow. To what? How do I deserve something that could leave? I didn't smile, didn't move. This wasn't a moment to soften. It was a moment to let him stand in the stillness and not break. He took a breath. I don't want to be owned, he said. Not anymore. Then stop trying to own. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. Folded, creased. He handed it to me. It wasn't typed, not notarized, not something his legal team had, pre-approved. It was a letter, in his handwriting, uneven, slanted slightly right. I unfolded it. Read slowly. I don't know if I love you yet, but I know I don't want to control you. I want to stand next to you, not in front of you. If you ever choose to come back, I'll be home. But if you don't, I'll still remember you as the woman who taught me what a real invitation looks like. No pressure, no possession, just permission. When I looked up, his eyes were on mine. No defense, no fear. Just a man who'd stopped trying to hold everything, and finally opened both. Hands. You don't have to say anything, he said. I just wanted to give you the choice back. I stepped forward, close enough to smell cedar and wind, and the faint, stubborn trace of cologne he always underused. Dominic. He looked up, held the letter gently between us. This isn't a declaration. No. It's not a proposal. I know. Pause. It's the first thing you've ever handed me that didn't come with a grip. He nodded, just once, and I smiled, not because I was in love, not because he earned it, but because he didn't expect it anymore, and that, finally, made it safe to give. I stepped beside him, not into his arms, just beside, and whispered, I'm not coming home with you tonight. Okay, but I might tomorrow. Okay, we walked out together, no hands, no kiss, no performance, just two people who had finally stopped trying to win and started choosing instead. He called me his possession. I made him my invitation, and in the end, we both walked, free, and side by side. If this story pulled you in, even for a breath, don't forget to like, share, or hit that subscribe button. More twists, more power plays, more women who aren't what they seem are waiting. Stay close. The next move is hers.